Is it considered eugenics to say it's okay to get an abortion knowing the child would be born with severe disabilities? It's a personal choice rather than a government policy bent on improving the population. If you are talking about just Down syndrome, some people do argue that it is eugenics, and other people say that it isn't. This group is larger. The fact is that some people with Down syndrome will live full, capable lives and be relatively healthy and functional, and others will be low functioning and have poor health. And the parents needing to make the decision have no idea which outcome there will be. They can't predict the future. So some say this is a type of eugenics, and others say no, that's not the definition of that. By definition, eugenics is a program to improve the human gene pool by selective breeding. Where it's due to social coercion or forced by a government, then it's obviously eugenic. When it's an individual decision out of concern for a child's health or concern about passing on negative traits, then that sounds like an individual decision about a person's reproduction. The counter-argument is the uncertainty. How certain can we be about how severe the disability will be and how able both parents and child would be to overcome the disabilities? What if we knew with certainty that a child has a genetic defect that will result in motor neuron disease, and the child would spend most of their adult life in a wheelchair and unable to even talk? Would we abort Stephen Hawking? You're not a eugenicist, you're a person with a deep concern for passing suffering onto your child if you have any. No one should judge you for that. It is a very personal question about what you feel would be okay for your quality of life and your child's. If a person wants to think it is morally reprehensible, that is their decision to have, but that doesn't mean it has to be yours. And you are correct, it isn't eugenics. You are not trying to breed a perfect baby, you are making an active decision that your specific child might have a very unhappy existence if disabled. Might be because it is a severe disability, might be because it is a disease that is painful and leads to a short life, or it could be a person doesn't have the means to ensure a person with a disability can have a normal, functional life. It is expensive. So let your friend have their feelings, but doesn't mean yours are wrong or immoral, they just have a different idea of what is ethical. Truthfully, it sounds like they lack the understanding that the world is nuanced. I think eugenics is about controlling people. If you kill a person because of their genes, that's eugenics. If you say a person can't have kids because of their genes, that's eugenics. But controversial, I know, fetuses aren't people. So killing them is not eugenics. And unless someone is forcing you to have an abortion, making your own decisions regarding procreation is not eugenics. Anyone can call it whatever they want. If we're talking about horrible, painful, life-altering disabilities, I might call it an act of mercy to send the poor little one's soul back to God. In any case, I'm grateful never to have been in that position, and I would not judge anyone who had to make that gut-wrenching, soul-crushing sort of decision. Technically speaking, kinda. But it's much different than saying you have two, like, not wanting a child to suffer, and or not having the ability to care or special needs is not the same as wanting to purify the gene pool. The term eugenics is a spectrum where not all meanings are equal. Your friend is too focused on semantics here. Whether it technically qualifies as eugenics by name is less important than the actual substance of the scenario. Is it wrong to abort a fetus that will have severe disabilities when born? No, I don't see any argument as to why that would be wrong that's based on anything logical. Well, that action has a certain name isn't a logical argument. No, it's only eugenics if a government or organization is enforcing the choice on people. The people themselves deciding to do so is their choice, and they need to have the option in order for them to be able to do that. Not at all. It takes a very special kind of person to take on a child with severe special needs, and those kids deserve nothing but that person. Those needs should be 100% welcome and accepted, for everyone's good. And if you're not the person, in a weird way, admitting it and not having that child and not putting both of you through hell is actually kind of being a good parent. It's being responsible. Saying I am not ready to take on a child with severe disabilities for you, in that specific situation, isn't eugenics. Eugenics would be saying every child with disabilities should be aborted. Totally different thing. Eugenics is a larger scale concept. It is the mass-organized push for screening undesirable traits from the population. While eugenics in the past did seek to prevent the passing down of genetic disorders, it was primarily done through forced sterilization of undesirables. Individuals deciding they individually don't want to pass down problems to the next generation, or on a case-by-case basis choose to abort, then that's not the same thing. Doesn't matter how you call it, it's the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned. Those who say it's morally reprehensible are deluded. It isn't eugenics, and no matter how people might feel about it, there are medical conditions that are severe enough that it absolutely warrants an abortion. In fact, I'd even argue that it would not only be unethical to have that child, but it should also be illegal. Why? Because there are certain medical conditions that are debilitating, life-ruining and fatal. It's unethical to give birth to a child knowing that that child will live in constant pain, will never have any semblance of a life, or quality of life, and/or will eventually die as a result of their medical condition. Why would you want to birth a child who suffers from progeria and will eventually die? It's not eugenics. It's ethical abortion. Frankly, I think it's irresponsible to give birth to a child who will have a painful and/or life-limiting condition. I especially despise when people give birth to babies who have something like Edwards syndrome, where the baby is highly unlikely to live more than a year at best, and their entire existence will be riddled with pain. I would argue it's eugenics going on contemporary meaning of the word, not original implication only when the choice is an imposition, or a non-choice. If a spouse, a family, a state, country, organization, or group outside from the individual makes that decision, it is eugenics. If the individual does, it isn't. And further, it has to be a consciousness action. That societal constraints and how they affect procreation are not, in my eyes, eugenics. No. Eugenics would say that you have to get an abortion if the child would be born with severe disabilities. To say that you are able to is an individual choice. That isn't eugenics. And it's not morally responsible to bring a baby into the world who will suffer. It's morally responsible to use modern medicine to abort the fetus. You shouldn't bring a disabled baby into the world if you know they are going to suffer or be given up for adoption. Maybe? But what kind of quality of life would someone with severe disabilities have? Like if it's to the point where they can't walk and talk and manage their bodily functions, then what's the point? My mom has a friend who takes care of her cousin, and dude has to have brain surgery every 6 months and can't do shit for himself, and now he's grown and she threw her back out lifting him. That ain't no way to live. That's called compassion. I wonder if it can come down to eugenics being a system and aborting a child with severe disabilities being a choice. You could argue that eugenics is an organized form of structural violence in which specific, identifiable, genetically passed down traits are deemed as unwanted within the population, with steps taken to remove those traits. Someone choosing not to bring a child with disabilities into the world is not making a decision based on that child's potential addition to the gene pool.